Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is review and approval of the minutes from the prior meeting. If somebody has any additions, corrections, updates, please share them. Otherwise, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That takes care of our minutes. Series of public hearings this evening. The first one is a conditional use permit for a fence. Mr. Hughes.
All right, so I'll just introduce this one briefly.
Please.
This one's at 2106 8th Ave Northeast, the Hughes residence. This is the plan that they submitted here, so just a pretty simple fence on three sides. Looks like there's a neighbor's fence here that they would want to connect to, and then on this rear property line here, it would be at least 3 feet off, and then here on this other side, it would be within that 3-foot distance. So with this one, just a couple of conditions: getting the access agreements from just the side neighbors, and then an acknowledgement that there is a 5-foot utility easement on this rear property line. So even though it wouldn't need an access agreement, it's still within the utility easement area.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Ian? With that said, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anyone has anything they'd like to share on the conditional use permit for the Hughes fence, if they'd be kind enough to come up to the podium and share their name and address, please. Oh, careful.
I'm Steve Hughes. I live there. I checked with neighbors on every side. Nobody had a problem with it. None of them came. I told them they could come tonight. But, yeah, so I was told the 3 feet. What I did was mark the lines, had everybody come and mark the lines, and then I made sure the fence wouldn't interfere with any of the lines. So right on my property line in the back, I am 3 feet inside of that one line that goes there. So it doesn't really interfere with anything else. If I would have came in 3 feet from the neighbor's fence, I would have been right on the line coming up to my house. So I just connected to their fence. They had no problem there.
Sure.
And I'm within inches on the other property line, but he had no problem either, so that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments? If not, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Gentlemen, your thoughts, questions, concerns?
Seems pretty straightforward.
If there's no additional comments, I would look for a motion, please.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That would be our recommendation to City Council on the Hughes conditional use permit. We've got 3 fences this evening. The second one is for Mr. Davis, another conditional use permit for a fence.
So this one is at 803 6th Ave Northeast. Just 2 neighbors for this one as well. There's already a fence that's constructed on this rear property line, so just the 2 side ones here. So just the same conditions that we're recommending on this one: access agreements for the 2 side neighbors, and then an acknowledgement of that 5-foot utility easement on the rear property line.
Any questions for Ian, gentlemen?
No.
If not, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anyone has anything they'd like to share on the conditional use permit for the Davis fence, if they'd be kind enough to come up to the podium, please.
Aaron and Brenna Davis, we live at the residence that we're currently looking at the moment. Current fencing, we've talked with all three neighbors, both north and south of us and the west side, and they're all fine with us having the fence there. We've, you know, as far as tying off on the fence as well, they're all okay with it and linking to the other sides. I guess one question I did have is, I'm just curious why city of Casson is probably the only city in the, around the 40-minute area that requires a conditional use permit.
I don't know if this is necessarily a forum to try to answer those questions, but I will be honest with you, we have gone through enough disputes between neighbors because one neighbor didn't tell the other neighbor that they were gonna put up a fence. So this exercise really isn't for the benefit of the city itself, it's for the benefit of your neighbors and the people around you. And hopefully, we are avoiding a little bit of conflict out in the community at large. At least that's my perspective on the matter.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Once again, gentlemen,
Straightforward.
yeah. If there's no questions, I would look for a motion, please.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That would be our recommendation on the conditional use permit for the Davis fence again. And the last fence this evening is Zachary and Jennifer Resch, another conditional use permit.
Yep, and this one is at 601 11th Ave Northeast, and this one has 3 neighbors, so they'd be building the fence on or within 3 feet of the side and the rear property lines. So the conditions for this one are just access agreements with 3 neighbors, and then, again, the 5-foot utility easement on the rear, just an acknowledgement of that.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? No? And one more time, we'll open up the public hearing for the conditional use permit for the Resch fence. If anyone has anything they'd like to share, if they'd be kind enough to come up to the podium, please.
My name is Zach Resch. Jen and I live at that residence. So we have spoken with some of the neighbors. Due to Plot South is a rental property, what responsibility do we have to find the original owner and make sure communication has reached them, as well as with other neighbors? How do we document that endorsement has been given by the neighbors to put it on the property line so that something can't happen after the fact?
Yeah, so for this one and for all of the fence CUPs, I handle that part going forward. So basically what I do, I just send a letter stating your neighbor got approval from the city to put a fence on or within 3 feet of their property line. As part of that approval, included in this letter is an access agreement, so it's pretty much all ready to go. All they have to do is just sign it, notarize it, and then send it back to City Hall.
Okay.
So that's how that goes.
Question?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comment on the Resch conditional use permit? If not, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
So, with the rental property, and would be sending it to that owner of the property?
Yeah, to the property owner, not the renter, the actual property owner, whoever it is.
Okay.
I assume the renter doesn't have any say in the matter.
Right, but I just wanted to make sure that it gets to the right, to help him, you know.
Sorry. How long do those property owners have to respond if we've scheduled something with a fencing company? Do they have a certain number of days?
I typically don't put a timeline on it. It really just depends how long it takes, yeah. Sometimes I get them back right away, and sometimes I don't get them back at all, so, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? No.
So if you don't get them back at all, is it just an accepted?
Then it's a condition of approval, so really a fence isn't supposed to be built on whatever side of the property that applies to whatever access agreement is still pending.
Excuse me.
Any other questions?
So it's just open-ended if they don't respond.
Pretty much.
So if Mr. Resch puts his fence up, at any point in time, a letter could come back and say, we're not cool with it.
Well, I mean, that could happen, hasn't happened yet, but...
But, so if you get one that doesn't respond, do you just reach back out to them with a follow-up?
Yeah, usually I do. I could do that, yeah, if I don't hear from them in...
Within a week, or?
Sometimes, yeah, it can take a while. Yeah, that's probably something to look into going forward, yeah.
Sure.
Can I have a further question?
Sure, not really a, pardon me?
I don't know how this works, sorry.
Sure, no.
So, my question is, when it comes to scheduling with a fence company, they're typically months out, right? I had to
Yeah.
schedule months out for my date. So if my neighbors don't respond by the time that I have it scheduled, I'm going against my approval from the city? Even though I've already booked months out and they've given approval, like by word of
Yeah.
mouth?
Sadly, my dear, that's one of the risks you take for putting a fence on a property line. You move it back, I believe it's 3 feet, you take that risk out of the equation. So, I mean...
But if you did talk to them and they gave you a verbal, I'm sure if they'll get the letter, I would believe they'd have no problem signing it, you know.
Sure, but that's at the discretion that they have availability to get a notary, right?
The city hall still has a notary, right, Ian?
Yeah.
Sure, but at their discretion.
Yeah.
Just checking.
No, and then we try to make it as easy as we can, trying to make it easier down the road so there's no lawsuits between neighbors and lawsuits, you know. Because if you sell it, the new property comes in and they're like, well, we didn't want that there was no approval, then it gets to be kind of a quarrel, so.
Isn't that why you just have the property lines marked to begin?
But you...
Clarify.
No, but if it's on the property line, you can't go to the other side without your neighbor's permission to be on their property to service your fence. That was the whole reasoning for this, is to make it...
Yeah.
So that's why if you move it in 3 feet, then you're on your property. But we get why everybody wants them on the property line, but then...
I'm not on the property line, I'm less than 3 feet, but I can go around my fence without stepping on their property.
But when we authored the fence, sir, I hate to say it, or at least the details on the fence, we weren't thinking about your property. We were thinking about the city as a whole. So that's where our head kind of
I don't have any more comments. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no.
So,
Thank you.
back to Mr. Resch's conditional use permit. Do we have any more questions or comments? No. If not, I would look for a motion, please. And that is a motion to... We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Would be our recommendation there as well, Ian. And the last public hearing, comprehensive plan amendment for the city of Castle.
Okay, so, this one has to do with 2 parcels that the city currently owns. One is the cemetery property itself, which is parcel 24.004.1200, and the other one is another city-owned parcel that's just south of that and south of the Windsor Court Manufactured Home Community. It's about 44 acres in size, and that parcel number is 24.004.1300. So the reason for this comprehensive plan amendment has to do with the proposal that the city received from ALS Properties to develop a portion of that 44-acre parcel, and they would be looking at doing an expansion of the Windsor Court manufactured home community. So you can see here in the packet, I've included what was submitted by ALS. You can see here they've got their general layout. It includes 85 new manufactured homes that would be put on this portion. It's roughly the east 19.5 acres here. So right now, this 44-acre parcel is guided towards parks, and the cemetery parcel is also guided towards parks. So the reason to change it now is because for all of this housing, it would have to be changed to medium-density residential in order to allow for this much density. And then the change for the cemetery property would be a change from parks to public and institutional. That one's really just a minor correction. It doesn't have anything to do with any proposed changes to the cemetery. It's just simply to make a correction to the future land use map there. So going forward, there would be quite a few different approvals that would be needed to move the project forward. This is just the first of many. So going forward, there would be rezoning and probably a PUD and platting as well. Talk about a few things in specific of the plan. I talked about parkland a bit. So of course, we were reducing the amount of land that was guided towards parks. However, we're totally in acknowledgement that the south side of Casson does need a park. And so on this very bottom portion here, I've got a couple of different things laid out. So this is just for reference what 1 acre looks like out of the entire parcel and the approximate location that we could see a park going, with a possible extension to the south part here if and when this property were to get annexed into the city limits. This here is a trail connection that goes between the proposed park location and the cemetery. And then in addition to these sort of park features, we were looking at extending a trail along this 8th Street southwest, just sort of connect that out to Manorville Avenue and beyond. Let's see what else. Street connections, you'll notice here in the concept they've got 2 different proposed connections, so 2 different points of access, and then into the existing manufactured home community, and then Windsor Court, of course, has 2 connections out to 8th Street Southwest. Well, and then stormwater, I'll go back to the concept plan here. This is a low point in the property, so it just makes sense for stormwater to go here in this location. There's a bit of a wetland beyond that, which makes developing this parcel a bit of a challenge. However, the city is recommending retaining this wetland portion, just because it's hard to develop on. It doesn't really make sense to sell it, I would say. Let's see, and then public utilities. As far as electricity goes, this is in people's co-op service territory, so should it ever come into the city of Casson's electric service territory, that's something to talk about at a later date. As far as water and sewer goes, there was a long discussion about how to handle that, whether or not it would work to tie into the existing Windsor Court facilities. And basically where that ended up was that it would be best to just put in new water and sewer new water main lines to connect to the new portion. And then going off of that, it would be extended to the outreaches of this parcel here in order to service future developments in either direction. And let's see, I already talked about the entitlement process, so let's see. We're recommending approval of this comprehensive plan amendment. I didn't include it in my staff report here, but I'd probably recommend just making it conditional on going forward with all the other entitlement processes. That way, it all goes together as one package towards the end with all the approvals. That makes sense. If there's any questions? Before I open up to public hearing.
Any initial questions, gentlemen? No?
Where did we end up with water service and having enough for the south side of town? Where did that conversation go with the water tower and?
Oh, I believe, let's see.
I thought that was supposed to be last week, or is it this week?
Oh, with the council, you mean?
I
Or,
know there was discussion with Brandon and
yeah.
potentially this project and some of the other projects that we've got on the south side.
Let's see. One moment.
We just haven't heard.
Okay, so the engineer is going to be giving an update on that at the council meeting next week.
Okay.
So we're only looking at changing the comprehensive plan today, not actually doing the zoning change?
Right, since we don't have an application on the table for zoning or PUD yet, that would be something going forward. So this, tonight, is just the comprehensive plan amendment, yep, for the two parcels.
Anything else? If not, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing component. If anyone has any comments they'd like to share, if they'd be kind enough to come up to the podium, please. This is specific to the comprehensive plan amendment for the city of Casson.
Troy Stoppel, 64109 240th Avenue. Can you bring up the other one with all the plots? Yep, keep going. Nope, the other way. Yep, one more.
This one?
Yep. What about the 19.2 acres? What are the plans there?
So those ones, we don't have any plans on the table yet. We've just had a few discussions with a few potential developers. This side of the property is just going to be very difficult to develop right now, just because there's this ridge that runs through the property. So basically, the east half drains to the east, and the west half drains to the west. And so just from a utilities standpoint, it makes it very, very difficult to develop the whole thing.
Because I know at one point they were talking, before the city annexed the cemetery, about expanding the cemetery that way.
Yeah. That, I haven't heard anything further on expanding the cemetery specifically.
Okay. I guess the only other thing would be, if they did come out that way, would they put access on 40th Avenue? Or would they, for traffic, if they could develop it for trailer houses, would they put an access out on 240th?
It did say that in the plan, that there would be a street that would go to 240th.
In which plan, sorry?
I don't remember exactly, but I do recall reading it. I'm Cindy Stockman. If you go back to your descriptions of the street component in your I thought I read,
Oh,
yeah.
street connection?
Both of these points would connect to Country View and ultimately connect to the public street network at 8th Street Southwest, 640th.
Yeah, that's...
Avenue.
No, we're 240th.
Avenue.
Yeah, but not 640th.
I'll put up here on this GIS, so,
Oh, that's how,
yeah,
that's...
this road here is labeled 640th Street.
That's 640th.
But
Oh,
I also...
thought that was 8th, that's 8th Street too, right?
Yes, that's why I put
Okay.
this flag.
Until it gets to the cemetery, then that's when it
Yeah.
turns to 640th Street.
Yeah, when it curves here, it
Well,
goes
that's
south at
confusing.
200.
Okay, that was my misunderstanding, then I was thinking you were putting a road that would come out that way. I misunderstood, sorry.
No, that's okay.
25th Street is...
But I just wanted concerned about the neighbors there.
This is you guys here?
Yep, and then Bonzer's up here. Would they actually be able to tie into your city water and sewer? Because they'll be right up next to their property.
That's a question for another day, I would say.
Okay, just a concern, and, because I know at one point, you know, we were the last ones on city power
Yeah.
for a long time, now we're switched over to Peoples. And I know we had talked with other city employees about running gas and stuff to our property, but it would cost so much. But if it's getting that close to us, I don't know how much more the cost would be, but then we'd have to go across
The road.
240th Avenue, go under the road to get utilities, but that ain't such a big deal for us. But I'm just, you know, about them, it would be easier for them in the long run. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I guess the only other one would be if that's too hard to parcel out for trailers, if they would extend the park recreational area over that way. Or they might just leave it for expansion of the cemetery later on.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, I think we'd be willing to look at options going forward, but just right now for this proposal, the whole west half isn't really affected very much.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Gentlemen, thoughts, questions, comments?
So the comprehensive plan amendment, it's the two parcels, so we're talking about the east half is developable and the west half is a little more challenging. But the item on the agenda tonight would change that whole, because it's one parcel, unless you were to divide it, it's one, that
Yep, so...
whole section would be medium-density residential,
Yep.
guided that direction.
Yep, so this whole 44-acre parcel, we're proposing to change to medium-density residential. And then here, this one, that's just the cemetery, would be from parks to public/institutional.
So even the proposed outlot's gonna be medium-density residential,
Yep, the whole thing would be medium-density residential.
right?
Is there any concern about traffic and adding the 85 lots? Because these come out, as we were talking before, come out onto 8th through the existing neighborhood there. Because the one parcel directly to the east of the one that we're looking at here is not within the city limits.
Yeah, this one
Time.
here is not concealed.
I mean, eventually Country View could connect over to Manorville Avenue. It's kind of, it's a dead end, yeah, right there. It's
Yeah.
a dead end right there. Would that be a possibility in the future, you think?
Potentially, I haven't seen any plans come through for this parcel here specifically.
That parcel has a lot of wetland
Yeah.
issues.
You can even see it on the GIS, like
Yeah.
all this is wet, basically.
It's a bit of a maze to get back in there, but we are in need of some housing options in the same, I guess, in my mind, so. We don't have any strong objections to it. Seems like a reasonable plan. We'll go through the rest of the process as we always do, but I don't see grounds to turn it down or some major pitfall, at least continuing the conversation.
if down the road it could get changed to the next level of something, if it hasn't gotten used, it could still be changed.
Well, but, Ian kinda touched on the fact we've gotta go through the rezoning process, and
Right.
and who knows what comes to the table in those conversations, so.
Exactly.
I guess I don't see a reason not to have those conversations. No other questions or comments? I would look for a motion, please.
I'd make the motion to approve the comp plan change to medium density.
We have a motion, to approve. Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Yep, I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You do have the concept plan review on here, Ian. Can I assume that the process we just went through was fundamentally that plan review, or did you have more to?
Yeah, I don't have anything further to say specifically, but if anyone has any comments that they'd like to share that they didn't already, now would be the time to do so.
I guess the only thing that I would say is from a concept plan standpoint, is there, from the ponding and wetland area, is there any way to configure that pond to, in turn, help with the wetland a little bit, to possibly utilize that area as the park?
Oh, as the park?
Yep. That would be my,
You'd have to ask
I know it's
our engineer, because
yeah, I know it's wet in there, and I know
Yeah, parks are really supposed to be on developable land, so if it's wetland and not developable, it doesn't really work to put a park there, is my stance on it.
There was also a park where the Shopko was a few years back, and that thing flooded out every year, so that's why you're getting the chuckle, so. Where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, if there's something we can do
But I
with
mean,
that.
yeah, we'd have, definitely, the city would have to talk to the engineer, because I know he's looked at it in multiple times and tried to figure out the best use for that, and the best way to deviate the wetland. And I know they've done some studies there, so.
Yeah, that would be my only question at this point.
Sure.
Anything else? Is there anything else anybody would like to discuss tonight? Any other comments?
Wilkers?
I sent the letter last week because I knew you were going to ask. I did send Mr. Wilker a letter just last week. Basically, I asked him to follow up with me when a good time for the inspection would, whenever he'd like me to come out there.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.